what was the biggest thing you've learned from training with John Meadows? I can't remember if you've answered this before.
Biggest thing I learned from training with John Meadows, some exercise variations. I don't want to say that was the biggest thing because, anytime you're training with somebody that's been around for a long time, you're kind of exchanging ideas every workout, every set, everything that you do. I would say what I took away and still do from John is he has a style of periodizing volume and effort into a bodybuilding program where, for me, as somebody whose passion's been in strength, my entire life, and I love the programming aspect of strength. I love, I'm not involved in the science of it as I used to years and years ago, where I just read the shit out of everything. But there's an art to it as well. And if you're training for, say a weightlifting, the hardest sports I think to actually peak for are, weightlifting, powerlifting, track and field, anything that's absolutely specifically measurable, because then what you do, it matters. Everything matters. So, powerlifting, you got to show up and you got to break a record on squat, bench, or deadlift. Or those have to go up. So the strength training program has to drive those up. So if the strength training program isn't working, it isn't progressing, those numbers don't go up, and you kind of know that. So the room for error, with weightlifting and, powerlifting and to some degree track and field, the room for error is very, it's very small. I mean, there's a lot of programs that work, there's a lot of variations that work, and yes, everything will work for beginners, everything will work for intermediates. But once you get past that intermediate phase and you move forward, that room for error, man, it's so fucking small. And that's what I love, is trying to figure out, how to manipulate and how to move around in that space that's got very little room for error to be able to help, lifters get better. Bodybuilding has an immense room for error on the training standpoint. It's basically obliviate the muscle, rest the muscle, and let it grow. So that's always been very unintriguing to me when it came to looking at different bodybuilding methods, different bodybuilding programs, and so forth, because that room for error is so large based upon, what the training has to do. In comparison, though, the room for error on nutrition and bodybuilding is very fucking small. And powerlifting, it's very big. So when you look at things as a whole, as a whole unit, it kind of all balances out. So there's, ultimate respect for all sports, because even if it's a skill sport, there's that room for error in the actual specific sport skill is very small compared to the room for error, and the weight room is going to be much larger. So what I learned from John is he manipulates the variables in the training program to try to, push the intensity really hard, push the effort. And when I say intensity in a bodybuilding standpoint, I'm talking about effort. A way to push that effort and then to be able to pull back from it so you just don't run yourself into the ground like a lot of bodybuilders eventually end up doing, is everything's to failure just over and over and over and over, and then they cease making progress because there's no type of flow, there's no type of periodization or no type of thought that's going into that. He's putting that thought into workload, and I'm sure it was done before. It's just in my scope, I didn't see it done before. So from that standpoint, when I would go, and even today when I go back and look at his programs and I start adding up volume, total number of sats and reps and workload, not real workload's irrelevant, but volume, which is sets and reps. And I look at that and I see, there's a method here where it's just not shit thrown on a piece of paper to try to stimulate a muscle to where somebody goes in to train chest and just basically does a flat bench, an incline, a decline, some type of fly, and calls it a day. Or the tricep, they do a push down and an extension and maybe some kind of close grip press and call it a day. A bicep, a curl, and a preacher curl. So it's thought out far greater than that. That would probably be the biggest thing I took from John.